How everybody is.
I need a lead in, dude. You got to give me something.
And you're up.
Is it recording right now?
Yes.
Is it really?
You'll cut it out.
Ah, fuck. All right. Hey, everybody, and welcome to I'll Watch It Later, the podcast where we lie to our friends about the movies we've seen. As always, I am joined with my best friend, Jordan.
Hello.
And my producer, best friend and brother-in-law, Scott.
Aloha.
So, welcome back to the show. As always, you can find us on Watch It Later Pod on Instagram and Watch It Later Pod on Twitter. And eventually one day we'll have Facebook or something. You can also go to our website, download from there. Just go through iTunes, Spotify, Podcaster, whatever you use to listen to podcasts. Yeah, that is what you can use. And what I meant by the Facebook thing is one day I'll be unbanned from Facebook and create the page.
That's why I'm going to create the page, and he will have no hand in it.
How dare you?
Like, we haven't heard anything from these guys for a long time.
I'll Watch It Later has been banned for racial insensitivity.
No, I was just recently banned for some... We were taught... The guy admitted he looked like Moon Man. Anyways. So, yeah. All right, everybody. We have a ton of information for you. And if you're like, whoa, small podcast in a closet.
Slow your roll, podcasters.
Slow your roll. I don't know who you think you are. That's completely fine. We agree. But this is our show, so we get to kind of do what we want. So I kind of racked my brain thinking what we could do for October. And if this doesn't work next October, we can change it up. Whatever we want to do, because it's our show. If you have any suggestions, you can always hit us up on Facebook, on those websites I mentioned, watchitlaterpod.com. So today we are going to do Scott's movie, and I'm going to let him introduce it here in just a second. But starting next week, it is our October spooktacular series of shows. Now, what does that mean? Well, everybody sitting here is white, and we all love horror films.
Wow.
It just pulled that out of nowhere.
Accurate.
I don't know. That had nothing to do with anything. I just thought it'd be funny.
So we're going to watch everything from Jordan Peele.
We are going to... We all love the horror genre. Me, Jordan, Scott. I think it's all pretty much our favorite genre when it comes to watching films. We are going to be doing double episodes. And what does that mean? You're going to do 2 episodes? No. So on top of our blind picks, where movies we haven't seen, we're also going to do a grab bag. It kind of harkens back to the time in October where you go and you go to like a grindhouse double feature and you know one movie's playing, but then all of a sudden you get a second movie and it's just as good and gory and crazy as the first movie. The only stipulation is it doesn't have to be not seen by any of us. We are just picking 4 of our favorite horror films that we can talk about on the show, and it will just be an extra long episode. All the episodes will be jam-packed. There won't be Blu-ray releases or anything like that. We'll be talking about all things horror for the entire month of December. You'll still get your snack show next week, but you'll also get another episode on top of that. And then at the end of the month, you'll get another snack show with another episode on top of that. So it's just all things horror, and I think we're really looking forward to doing this.
Yeah, much like our t-shirt sizes, these episodes will be double extra large. And yeah, I'm excited. I love horror movies. I actually, yesterday was October 1st, for those of you listening, and I always do my 31 days of horror, so I already started watching, scary themes, horror themes, more, holiday themed type movies, and I started watching the first not Friday the 13th, but Nightmare
Before Christmas.
God, I wish. No.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Nightmare on Elm Street, thank you. And then I caught the second Addams Family movie that just released.
Oh, was it good?
It was actually pretty enjoyable. Actually, I liked the first one surprisingly enough, and the second one wasn't too bad. Me and Wesley watched it, and it's a good family movie.
That's your son,
Addams Family.
who's
Yes,
also
it is.
a child.
And here with the living in Arizona, which we're in, for those of you who may not know where we are,
Give out our address.
It's that time of season, man. The temperature has dipped below 90. and we just want to wrap ourselves up in flannel and watch horror movies.
The Uggs come out, the pumpkin spice is flowing. The only way we know it's fall is the pumpkin beers are on the shelf, so that's how we know, and that's when we watch our movies.
Right, and we'll get into a little more of that in next week's episode. We still have an episode to do today for you, so I want to get into that. Before we start talking about this episode, I just want to let you know, if you like diatribes, this is the fucking show for you. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to let Scott introduce it, and then I'm going to say what needs to be said. But this is the show for you. I have said this to you multiple times, Jordan, that movies that you have picked are the essence of the show. But I think this is the most I'll watch it later show we have ever had. So
yes, I have street cred.
So go ahead, Scott. Go ahead and introduce and start us off here.
So my pick was from 1968, and I will kind of retract because I got the names wrong after listening to some of the audio commentary. Directed by Sergio Leone, starring Henry Fonda, Charles Bronson, and Claudia Cardinale. Once Upon a Time in the West.
A film by Sergio Leone who gave a new face to the West with a fistful of dollars for a few dollars more. And the good, the bad, and the ugly. Starring Claudia Cardinale, Henry Fonda, Charles Bronson, and Jason Robards. A manhunt. A vendetta. In a new land, in a new kind of Western.
So, Once Upon a Time in the West is...
There is no quiet way to do that.
No,
Who cares? Who
you know,
cares?
it is what it is.
Keep rolling.
A mysterious stranger with a harmonica joins forces with a notorious desperado to protect a widow against a ruthless assassin who works for the railroad.
Yes, absolutely.
That's-
And as I
that's
mentioned
in a
last
nutshell.
week,
I'm not going to lie, that's a very generic... Any Western has that storyline. The essence of that storyline is almost in every Western that I've ever seen.
and as I mentioned last week, it's a huge influence on Tarantino and other things that have come out over the years. This movie is highly rated on Letterboxd. It's it's one of the best movies ever made, and none of us had ever seen it. And I'm very excited to talk about it. So, Scott, what did you think?
It is... So, I didn't know a lot about this movie in general. I picked it because it was on that list. It is... Now, going back and doing some research, it's one of 3 movies of the nameless person, or what is that what they call it? The nameless cowboy?
You're talking about the Good, Bad, Ugly, Fistful of Dollars.
Correct.
A few dollars
Dollars
more.
more.
So it's like the third grouping of his movies of the nameless cowboy. Or
Okay,
the nameless...
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, so
because I think at one point Eastwood was supposed to do this.
he was
film?
supposed to be in it,
Right.
and he was apparently, from what I understand after kind of looking some stuff up, was he was supposed to be one of the 3 gentlemen at the train station in the beginning of the movie.
Okay.
So he wasn't Charles Bronson's character, which is what I kind of thought it was. That's what he was playing, but he
Right.
didn't want to be. He didn't want to be stereotyped in
Yeah,
doing his third spaghetti western movie.
I think it would have been a 4th at
Or
that
maybe it's
point.
4th.
And yeah, he was looking to avoid being typecast.
What
So,
was his like the
A few
ones I
dollars
mentioned?
more, once upon no,
Good, the
no,
Bad,
sorry,
the
Good,
Ugly.
Bad, the Ugly, and a few dollars more.
Well, those are 3. Oh, I
Yeah,
see what you're
this
saying.
would have
going
been the
to 4th.
4th
Okay,
of
okay, my bad.
that,
I'm sorry.
that particular.
Because he did
group.
like the Beguiled and
Well,
two,
he was in Paint Your Wagon.
Yeah.
I mean, he's done
Two
westerns
Mules
before.
for Sister Sarah, stuff like that. That's all. I know. Clint Eastwood has nothing to do with this film. I'm sorry. I'm going
But
on
yeah,
with
he
that
was
right
trying to get a breakout of the the spaghetti westerns, the being basically Leone's go-to guy. I mean, that was his reasoning for not taking on this role.
Okay.
And I've always heard the term spaghetti western, and I never really knew where it came from.
Italian guys making
Right.
It's
So
literally
I kind of
Italian cast, Italian directors.
I looked it up, and that's the BBC what it said. It was cheaper to film the movies in Italy than it was in the United States.
This was filmed in Arizona, Utah, and still almost an entirely Italian cast. You can tell in a lot of the
Right.
dialogue being overdubbed.
So my initial thoughts for the movie is I try to go in with just a blank slate. I don't want to do a lot of research on it. I don't want to look up things. I just want to watch the movie, and I just want to just see it for what it is. Now, I knew that it was a 2-hour, 45-minute runtime. Apparently, there's a shorter version that was released in the United States that I think was, what they say, it was 144 minutes or 100 and some odd minutes.
It was way shorter, but it cut a lot of the heart of the movie and the storyline completely out of it.
Right. I knew going into that it was going to be a long movie. I have a problem watching long movies. I will fall asleep because that is my MO. I work.
Are old.
Yeah, I work. I'm old. So I had to kind of cut this up into parts. So I sat down and watched, about an hour of it, got up, did some stuff, came back because I didn't want to really miss anything. Now, what I have to say is the initial opening sequence, I did hear from a lot of people that it was one of the greatest opening sequences of any movie. I kind of agree. It's the setting, the cinematography, and just the overall set design of this movie is actually incredible. When you look at it, it is the essence of the West. It's how I don't even know how to describe it. There's a difference between the good, the bad, and the ugly in this movie. You could see the leatherness of their faces. Everything was gritty and dirty. The costuming was dirty and gritty and worn. I don't think there was any detail that was left off the table. And we start out with these three outlaws in this train station waiting for this train to come in. And there's no dialogue. And all you can hear is the creaking of a windmill.
Yeah, it's literally the only dialogue spoken was by this older gentleman in the train station that asked them something about, when the train is coming or getting on the train. And then after that, you're right. It's almost 15, I would say close to 20 minutes of just scenery, focusing on the characters. I mean, the reason why you can tell these guys are the, sun-beaten, beaten looking guys is Leone sits there on their faces for an extreme amount of time, and you get to almost you would think you pause the movie, you're just studying these people's expressions and characters, and it is beautiful. I mean, it felt long, the beginning felt long, but it is a very beautiful opening to a movie.
Yeah, and I guess that was all, that was intentional, was him to linger on these scenes for a long time because he wanted to create the tension of the scene. There's a crazy scene where it's probably a good 10 minutes of this guy fighting with a fly. The fly is on his face, and it keeps landing on his face, and he's trying to kind of take a nap, and he keeps blowing at this fly, and it's actually pretty funny. And then the train kind of comes in. They walk up to the train, and Charles Bronson's character, which they call Harmonica, gets off the train, but you don't see him until the train starts to pull away. The outlaws turn around, and you hear this harmonica playing, and it reveals, as the train pulls away, it reveals him on the other side, and we get kind of the first gunfight of the whole scene. And
I legit thought when they're showing the fly on that guy's face, and I've seen that actor in a number of things, and I could not place where. He's very recognizable as a character actor from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I couldn't tell you where, but this is pre CGI anything. This was this is a fly on this man's face. I don't know how they did it. I'm actually in awe of how that fly just stayed on his face. I thought he was going to eat that fly. I swear to God, I thought it was going in his mouth.
I did look it up. Apparently, before the scene, they rubbed jam all over his face.
Oh my God!
And then released a jar of flies underneath him, and just waited for that whole scene to unfold.
Wow. Yeah, because no CGI. I mean, this was a real fly on this man's face for probably 10 minutes.
Yep. And it kind of reveals that it kind of sets up the whole movie. So you've got later on, you'll kind of be introduced to, Henry Fonda's character, Frank. And these guys were sent to basically kill the harmonica guy at the train station. And he ends up shooting all three of them. And then we go into what is now really the setup of the movie, where they go to the farm of the guy who is
the Weasleys,
the rich, the McBains.
Yeah.
So they go up. It kind of shows him. They're preparing their meals. They're doing their whole thing, and then just out of nowhere, gunshots start ringing out, and you don't know where they're coming from. And there was a lot of setup to this scene where you could hear a lot of noises, like nature noises, out in like the fields.
Yeah.
And there'd be dead silence. And
well, it's the family is refusing to sell their land in order to move the train.
So the train is coming
track.
through,
Yeah,
and they're the only place that has water.
Right, and they're kind of holding out.
Yeah.
It's kind of like an industrial story in the sense that it's like ushering out the old and bringing in the new, and that's kind of where the cowboys are at the same time. Is this like whole parallel of storytelling where it's like this new generation of world is coming in, and like cowboys aren't seen as the same heroic gunfighters. They're all they're all dirty, mangy, like outlaws in their own way, and it's just a parallel. I think that's important to the story, so because it kind of sets up the entire movie up until the very last scene. So
it's their modern day industry. So it's them basically it's building up this western town. And the whole family basically gets just shot off, and you can't see anything. And then all of a sudden, in my favorite scene in the whole movie, which is shot so well, these outlaws come out from the brush.
Right. Like
and
they were just silent.
Yeah, in their trench coats, and they're walking, and the breeze is blowing the trench coats. They walk up to the house only to find that there's one kid left that's alive. And the one guy looks at him and he goes, "All right, Frank, what do we do?" And
now that you said my name.
Yeah,
It's
now
a
that
very
you said-
classic like setup. Like in every movie that has some kind of bad guy in it, it's the same thing where it's like, well, I got to take care of it. You said my name. Like, never say the guy's name. And this guy's like, well, Frank, what are we gonna do? I'm like, I thought he was gonna shoot him.
I thought he was going to shoot him.
You're
as
dead
well.
now, and now the kid's dead.
Frank, the Henry Fonda character, was voted the second greatest bad guy of all time. I think Darth Vader was first. Ever and from this movie.
He's ruthless.
He is. And as the movie goes on, he's more. You kind of find out that he's not this like huge, bad guy. He kind of has reins being pulled by the other guy.
The train guy, the guy that owns the train station.
I wish I knew his name. And then even to the point where like his own gang turns on him. I know I'm kind of jumping ahead, but it's just like it's such a crazy turn, and
I think for him, he's more of a relic of a time that's going away.
Right.
Like you've
Like,
got
that's what I was saying earlier.
the industry's coming in, the towns are getting built up, and these cowboys are kind of going out, by the wayside.
Right.
And he's that relic. He's that ultimate bad guy. And for Henry Fonda, it was a departure from a lot of roles that he had played before. And this is why it's like the first villain turn in his career, and it's such an iconic thing because he's an asshole.
Yeah.
He gets the kid shot at the beginning, and that's a great scene because there's a lot of sitting there and just staring. A lot of close-ups on the kid, and you see a kind of almost a tear coming down because he's in shock. His family's dead all around him. And then you've got this gang in front of you. He's not running. He's just standing there. And it's back and forth, just staring at the kids, staring at the gang. The guy says Frank's name, and he's like, well, you got to take care of it. And then you see gun come up, guns ring out, and there it is. But you're right. With the sound, it was a lot of background noise, a lot of, the farm being worked, things like that. And then right before the family gets shot, dead silence. It's almost like nothing happened. And then you hear the gunshot go off, and then the birds fly out. It was very great use of sound in that because you almost feel like, oh shit, something's about to happen.
Well, in the transition from that scene where you see he pulls the trigger, you see the smoke from the gun, and you see the birds fly, and it immediately just transitions to the train coming through. So it just kind of sets up that whole thing. I love the beginning of this movie. I mean, it kind of set the whole tone for these guys. It didn't matter who was going to stand in their way. They would shoot kids to get this property.
Right.
And from the things that I read afterwards, I guess Henry Fonda showed up to the set, I guess, in a mustache. I guess he had brown contacts because he wanted to look like a bad guy. Sergio Leone was like, nope, take the contacts out, and I want you to shave the mustache. He goes, You have a recognizable face, and I want people to see your face when
Right.
you pull that trigger, because I want them to feel that oh my God, because we've known you as a good guy for your whole entire career, that you play all these good parts, and now you're playing this evil villain of this Western town.
Right. Yeah,
The
that
train
was great.
conductor's guy name was Morton, by the way, and I'm gonna I just want to put that in there. I
Yes.
feel like we're always unprepared. So
And that guy's like a weird character too, because like
The
they
names are
set him-
crazy
yeah, and they set
this
him
movie.
up as like infirm, like he's this rich,
right, I think he's
train tycoon, but he's like in a neck brace. I guess he had like polio maybe, and like maybe like
tuberculosis.
So maybe like this is his way of assuring his legacy after he goes, because it's the West. There's no coming back from this. He knows he's gonna die soon.
Yeah, his I think he's incredibly underrated. That character, just because he's so desperate. Like in the towards it was like towards the middle of the movie. He's looking upon a ocean, and he's like knows that he's never going to see this ocean. Like it's just he's like I said earlier about the times are changing type of situations. It's just this. It's all these old guys realizing that everything is about to be different, kind of like us, like, with everything that's going on with like Facebook and stuff like that. It parallels that. It's like, okay, this guy, all he wanted to do was go to the Pacific Ocean, see the ocean. He sunk everything he had into this, and he's not going to achieve that dream, no matter how hard he tries, no matter who he pays, no matter who he kills.
Yeah, he's
and
like that last holdout.
I just think he's just an incredibly underrated character in this film.
Well, there's a lot of supporting characters, and that's what drives this film. Is there's a lot of secondary characters other than the main characters that really kind of piece this whole thing together.
Yeah.
So after this whole kind of thing, we find out that Jill, who is Claudia Cardinale's character, in another great scene where she comes in on a carriage and horse through Monument Valley.
Yes.
And
that was beautiful.
It's just this wide angled lens of her coming in, saying she's going to, meet her husband, this and that. Well, that's what they didn't bargain for. They didn't bargain for that. They figured, okay, we took care of the family. The place is ours. We're going to get it. Well, she comes rolling in. She's married to him. And now she's kind of the rightful owner of this whole property.
Right. Well, the big setup was the family was preparing for her arrival. The kids didn't know her. I guess the dad had gone to New Orleans and met her and was bringing her in to get married. And she would be a stepmother to these kids, a wife to him. No one knew about it. And it turns out they were actually married in New Orleans a month prior and told no one. So, yeah, she came in expecting someone to be there at the train station, didn't get anybody, hires a wagon, and starts, like you said, coming through and just traveling to the property. And that's who she was. She was the wife that no one knew about because it was a secret. It was going to be a big surprise. And you kind of find that out a little bit later at the funeral scene.
But it's just, again, I harken back to the whole cinematography of the whole thing. It's the sets that they decided to use just oozed Old West, and it just puts you in that. It didn't look like it was a built-up set. You know what I'm trying to say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very organic, very already standing structures kind of situation.
Right.
Yeah.
So, for me, it was just, visually, it's just an amazing movie. I know that I've been talking about how much I kind of like that opening sequence and stuff, but
I'm not going to get to my stuff until the end, so you can go to Jordan. I have a lot to say, and I think
this
needs to go into. It needs to all be said at once,
and I think
will get
this
to
is
that.
important because as we always kind of text message or message each other and say, what did you think?
As we discussed,
what did you think of the movie? We may not talk about it, but we're always curious to know, okay, what did you think of the movie?
I can go into it. I can start
now.
now.
I think it's fine because
Okay.
I think it just really barks to what this movie is, because I asked Aaron, I said, what did you think of the movie? And he goes, his reaction to me and his response to me was, he's like, I didn't like it.
Okay.
Well, and it was weird because in another weird turn, like we don't talk about when we're gonna watch these. We kind of maybe say, hey, I'll catch it this week or whatever. And in another weird twist, just like with I Saw the Devil, me and Aaron both started this around the same time this same night. Right. So he's telling me at the beginning, this feels long. Like the beginning sequence is a long feel, and to me, as beautiful as this is, I felt the same way. And it feels like the Peter Jackson moment of maybe you should cut something here and there. You're lingering too long, and I think maybe that's just my ADD or something, because there are times where they just sit there on something, and I'm like, okay, what's gonna happen? Like, hurry up and get to the next thing.
So, I'm just gonna get into it. I'll just do my thing now, because this is a whole thing with me, and this is actually, like I said earlier. Yeah, go ahead. Jordan just leaned back.
We're putting our headphones down. We're gonna walk out, get our beer.
I did kind of talk to Scott about this, but I needed to bounce it off of somebody, because I needed somebody to understand. As we sit here today, my favorite Westerns before I saw this were Unforgiven and Tombstone, the incredible movies. But I didn't have a ton of old references when it came to Westerns. When I sat down on Tuesday night and I watched this film, I wanted to kill myself. And I don't even mean that as like a hyperbole. Like, I just wanted to run out of the room screaming. I thought that the beginning was incredibly boring. I thought that it was just too much. It was like, what are you doing? What is going on? To the point that I was upset with myself after this film was over. I was distraught. I was beside myself. I went in and woke up my wife and literally said to her, like, what is wrong with me as a person that
I don't care. What are you waking me up for?
That I can't understand why people love this film. I went on to Letterboxd. I read all the raving reviews. It's the ones that are bad are talking about, like, technically, we'll get into this, but there's like a rape sequence, blah blah blah. It's not technically rape, but it is, I guess. I don't know. There's consent involved, and I don't know how the world works, and I'm not condoning rape or anything. I'm just saying I didn't consider it that. They were both using each other in that scene. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. The reviews with this were all within the 4 or 5 star range, 3.5, 2s for the girls who did not like the rape. And I'm sitting there, I'm talking to Jordan, and I'm saying to Jordan, what's wrong with me? Like, am I really just this poser who has a ton of movies that he, just to flex because he thinks he's a cinephile? And I was mad at myself. I was like, this isn't okay. This is not okay.
Would you mind if I shared one thing? Okay.
Go ahead.
This is word for word. Bro, that shit was hella boring, and I'm so conflicted because it's supposed to be this masterpiece of cinema, and I'm like, when does that start? I honestly feel like a big dumb fuck for not sucking this movie's dick.
Okay.
Legit, as he finished this movie, I'm about maybe 15 more minutes behind him, and yeah, this was the long, probably another 20, 30 minutes of conversation between.
So I did have that conversation with you, but I did not tell you what I'm about to tell you. So I talked to Scott in the morning, and I kind of went over the same thing with him, and I was like thinking of it in the show, thinking like, I'm a fucking moron. That I cannot understand this. And Scott's like, dude, chill. Even if you hate it, it's cool. Like, then that gives us something to talk about, which I agree. But I'm sitting here like, my favorite director in the whole world loves this fucking movie. Like, and I love his movies. So where is the disconnect? So what I did is I worked a 12-hour that day and at a computer. And I started watching YouTube videos. And I started reading reviews of people both recently and past. I started watching a lot of stuff with Tarantino. I started watching a lot of like Siskel and Ebert stuff. I watched a ton of like reviews on YouTube. The next night, that Wednesday night, I watched this movie again. Different headspace. I actually anticipated watching it. And I'm like, okay, dude, this is going to be super boring. But you guys got to get through one more time. And maybe you can see the thing that they didn't see was there. And I did. And I'm not sure if maybe Tuesday night I was not in the right headspace. I know that I didn't want to watch a 2-hour and 45-minute movie on Tuesday night. I know that. I didn't want to watch a 2-hour and 45-minute movie on Wednesday night either. But I sat down and I said, I'm going to try again. I'm going to try again. And if I still hate it, then I'm out of here. So I put myself in this other headspace, and I'm not sure if, I really didn't want to watch a 2-hour and 45-minute movie again. I didn't. I was ready to hate it all over again. But after I talked to you guys, after I thought about it, I rewatched it, and I noticed the beginning. It was, not that it was a great beginning in general, but how many people have copied it, type of thing. Like there's stuff like that in like Tarantino movies and stuff like that. And then I started comparing it, and I found myself enjoying it a lot more. So my opinion of this movie completely changed, and I think that is what the essence of this show is. We watch one movie, we decide if it's good or bad, and then we never revisit it again. I think the good thing about seeing films like this, or not having the same opinion as everybody else, makes you wonder what it is they saw that you did not see, and it makes you explore film more, because watching those YouTube videos, reading the articles and stuff like that was the most fun I've had since we picked the movie. Like I was sitting there like, oh, that makes total sense. These nuances. Oh my goodness. This is where he got this shot from Reservoir Dogs, or this is where Spielberg used this, because they saw these movies as kids and they immediately love them. I think that I didn't initially love it because I have seen it in everybody who I love that does films work. So it wasn't anything new to me. And I'm not looking at this as like, this is what pushed that forward. It's kind of like, and if you're like, what the fuck are you talking about, Aaron? The biggest example I can have is the people who hate the Beatles, but they like bands that the Beatles inspired, like Metallica and stuff like that. That's the best way I can describe it. It makes more sense the more you watch it. And how we were talking about Step Brothers, which is not even on the same level, but there's some movies where you watch them multiple times. I would absolutely watch this again. I'd absolutely see this in the theater again, and I'm not rating it. We could still get into more of this, but I'm just saying I appreciated what this movie made me do, if that makes any sense.
I understand,
and I'm totally ready to argue with you. So let's go.
No, and I'm not going to try to argue. I'm thinking, for me, is your appreciation for this movie, and you're now, after your first viewing of the movie, this change in how you feel about the movie, is it influenced by the fact that you had other people tell you where to look and what to look for? Because for me, my initial run was, it was long. It felt long. It was boring in a lot of parts. It could have been cut down in certain areas. I feel like the story has been done before. And my opinion is based off the fact that since this movie came out, you're right, there have been other movies like it. There have been other shots like this. There has been other Westerns that me personally find to be better than this movie. And I understand what it influences and what it does, but I went at it at the lens of, how I initially felt. I may go back and watch it again. I may not still feel the same way, but I'm also not going to allow other people's opinions of it, other critics of it, other things like that to influence how I'm now viewing it. Because if I start viewing things like, it's the same thing as taking Rotten Tomatoes and saying, oh, this is a 50% movie, I'm going to hate this because it's 50. No, there's been a lot of movies that the critics have rated very low that I find very entertaining for one reason or another. So for me to sit there and watch 1,000 videos or whatever, and I'm not saying that that's what you did, but and to have people point things out to make me feel like, you're right, I didn't see something they didn't. Well, I'm not going to see things like them. I'm coming at it from the lens that I just didn't like something, or I love something. I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong in changing your opinion. Everyone's allowed to change their opinions. That's the beauty of it. I just think watching it the other night, like we did, doing tons of research, rewatching it, I think was so close of a span. It's hard for me to feel like if I did that my opinion would change. And if it did change, I feel like it would be too influenced by what I just researched.
So first off, no one told me to look up anything.
Right. No, I'm not saying
okay.
they did.
And secondly, the review, it's more of reading the stuff that people had posted. It didn't influence me. It just made me want to watch the film again. Not, if you get excited for something like a snack or something, or like I do, I immediately want to try that snack.
Right.
So, it's kind of the same thing. These people were so excited about this particular thing that it made me want to get excited about it as well. But what you're saying, I get, but I don't think movies always work that way, and that's kind of the conversation I want to have. Like, I know we usually break down the movie, but I think this is a much more important topic than breaking down a movie or even going through it by scene. I think movies or I think opinions can change on movies based on mood, headspace.
I agree with that.
Once you learn more about it, I think there are movies that I absolutely can't. No matter how many times I see them. This is a terrible example. Grown Ups. I think that movie's trash. I think most of Adam Sandler films are trash. I've seen that movie maybe 50 times because it's on TV. You know, a lot of the Army guys like watching it.
I'm changing my picks right now for the future movies.
I've never been like, oh, you're excited to watch Grown Ups? Let's watch Grown Ups. And I know that's a terrible example, but another example would be Midsummer. Us three in this room went and saw Midsummer 3 years ago. We all came out of that movie absolutely hating it. I have revisited Midsummer. I still don't think that's a very good movie, and I have my own problems with Ari Aster. But I do not hate it as much as we did walking out of that film. And that is because I have spent so much time listening to so many people's interpretations about the boyfriend and all that stuff. And I think that's the same thing I did with Once Upon a Time in the West, except this time it was like, oh, I see that influence. Oh, I see this. I paid a little bit more attention. I wasn't on my phone. I wasn't texting you. I didn't even tell you I was watching it again. And I'm not saying that I didn't like it because of that I was doing those things with you. I'm saying I watched it a different way. I watched it the first time out in my living room. I watched the second time in here, doors closed, lights off, nothing, no distraction. I turned my phone off. I turned my computer off. So I'm just saying I changed my opinion based on my views and based on, I think, my headspace. That's it. And I get what you're saying. If you don't like something, why would you go back and revisit it?
No, I've revisited things that I've not liked. That's true. I've never revisited something I didn't like the same week. And the same week after watching videos. Because for me, the feeling is still there. It still feels the same movie.
So
even if I learn about it. So I need time.
I usually wouldn't. But we do this
yeah,
show, and it kind of forces me to do that. Believe me, dude, I did not want to watch 8 hours of movies this week. I had so much going on, and I could have been doing other better things with my time. But I wanted to see if it was that I missed something, or am I going to, stay firm with this, with how I felt, and to me, it just felt like I missed something. When I watched it the second time, it was like watching it for the first time, if that makes any sense. So that's all. I cannot like express how like different it was watching it the second day than it was watching it the first day. And I was really excited for for Scott to watch it, because I had talked to you and I was like, I had already changed my opinion by the time Scott had watched it. And Scott was like, this movie is excellent. And I'm like, okay, so what? So I'm like,
you're like, how does this big dummy
what the hell did I miss?
seeing what I don't see?
So that's all.
Right, and I'm not saying you're this way, and I'm prefacing it with this right now. There are times where people want to be, and again, it's not you. This is, people want to feel smarter about what they watch and what they see people
and I agree
enjoy. And you even said something in a text where, what am I missing that these other people are seeing?
Right.
And for me, it's like everyone sees things differently. Just because you're not seeing it doesn't mean you can't objectively say this is a good movie or a bad movie. And my fear is that sometimes in the pursuit of wanting to like something that is so highly revered, that we let other people's influences taint what we feel about it.
And going back to what we were saying, I agree with you in that aspect. I hated Hereditary. People
me too.
People online say that that's the greatest horror film in the last. I have rewatched Hereditary. I gave it a year cool off period. And it's when all these articles started popping up about Alex Wolff, he got PTSD, and all these the AV Club and all that stuff saying it's the greatest horror movie in 10 years. It'll blow your mind. I revisited it. I hated it just as much as I hated it the first day. Watching, what is it?
Midsummer?
No. Watching Once Upon a Time in the West, and I wasn't trying to think of that. I was trying to think of another word. Again, and immediately liking it more than I did the first time. It's happened occasionally with me, not all the time, but there are movies that are just so revered that I can't fucking stand. I really don't care if people are like, well, you're dumb. That's a great movie. So and I'm just
Someone
using
literally said that to me by not liking Hereditary within this last week. Like,
Are you
legit,
serious?
I said, in a group chat, I said I did not like Hereditary or Midsummer, and I got groans from 3 people
Right.
saying, "Well, now your opinion doesn't matter." You know, they
Right,
were
right.
joking about it, but I'm like sitting there going, "How these movies were not like good movies?" Like,
Correct.
What, and I'm the same way. What am I seeing? When we've done this before, where we've gone to a movie and people are rating it so high. I mean, look at *Malignant*. I mean,
Yeah.
I hate going back to that but
me too.
people are raving about this movie, saying it was really good. It's a good movie. It's not a horror, but it's a good genre-bending movie. And we're sitting there going, this was one of the worst things we had to watch. And we didn't even have to watch it. We just watched it just to watch it, just to talk about. And I don't know what other people are watching.
And
I just don't understand. And none amount of, well, you're not seeing it this way or this. No, this movie was shit. You know what I mean? Like, so no amount of YouTube videos are going to change my opinion.
I agree with you, and
I understand with this being such a huge cinematic movie, especially A, for its time, and B, what it has influenced. I can get where maybe you want to revisit it. For me, and I know because of the confines of the time frame of when we needed to do this.
Correct.
I just personally, if I went back and watched it again the next day, I would still, I think, feel the same way, no matter what. Because I did the same thing. I looked up some stuff. I wanted to see where it was filmed. I thought it was beautiful. I kind of want to go where they filmed it. Like, I want to see all this stuff.
I was going to say that.
I want to do a road trip.
I just sent Aaron a video.
And
Legit,
yeah.
the archway where the guy was being hung, that still exists. It's broken, but you still see the structure of it, like the bones of it. You know where that's at. I want to see these things, and it makes
Right.
you kind of really. It is a beautiful movie and makes you long for a time where maybe we didn't have so much built up stuff. Like,
Right.
I want to see what the Old West was like. You kind of, I always joke that living in Arizona, we have really no history. I can't go to a museum and see grand works of art and stuff like that. Like, if you see like on the East Coast, what we have is the Old West, and I still feel like I haven't experienced any of that. And I want to see Monument Valley. I want to see these big vistas that, for all intents and purposes, they still exist.
Have you been to Tombstone?
I haven't.
We
In
should
fact,
go.
I want
We
to
should
go down
go.
to Tombstone, and
should.
I just want to see some of these things and feel that history. And that's what this movie did for me. It made me really long for going on a road trip.
Nobody wants to go to Yuma though, so just
Oh,
I've
I
been
go
to
there
Yuma.
every day.
Gross.
So, but no, honestly,
been to McDonald's.
We should put an episode in the can and go down to Tombstone again because that was a
We'll
great
go watch
time.
Tombstone down in Tombstone.
I'm down. Well, they reenact it right.
I
in
think
front
Val
of me.
Kilmer does that every year.
Well,
he
Well,
does-
I have
probably
a-
not
he still
anymore.
he still does it. Like,
Oh,
even
wow.
in his documentary, he still
I
goes
have a
down
guy
there.
that I used to work with who actually portrays Doc Holliday.
Oh my god, we should watch Doc Hollywood.
It's Mike.
He portrays Michael J.
He walk-
Fox.
I was just gonna say, he walks in as Michael J. Fox. Hey guys.
but
The man shakes into a bar.
But he does Doc Holliday, and there's actually a descendant of Wyatt Earp who
That's
actually
awesome.
plays Wyatt Earp in like a lot of the gun shows. He's actually related in like his family line.
And I think that's what taints this movie for me. And I'm not saying it's a bad movie.
Well, I just want to go
I
back
just-
and finish my points real fast, and then I'm gonna let you get. We're gonna keep going with the movie because I get that we have gone off.
Nope, I already forgot everything I
the
said.
rails, and I was anticipating this. I even told Scott, like, I purposely not telling Jordan because I honestly think we're gonna fight on the show about this because of I know that's how you are, and
How's that, Aaron?
well, no, just like you can't. You think I thought you were going to say exactly what you were going to say. Am I only doing this because I want to be cool? And it's not about being cool.
Yes.
I don't. No, I'm
Thanks,
not.
everybody.
It's not about being cool. It's not about, oh, well, if everybody else likes it, I have to like it, because I refuse. I even told Scott when we were kind of discussing the beginning of this film. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, probably one of my favorite movies of all time. We literally went to L.A. just to go to the filming location, just like I want to do with Once Upon a Time in the West. When I initially saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I thought it was okay. I didn't even think it was, it wasn't even, I didn't even think it was in Tarantino's top 5. I went and saw it 3 more times in the theater, and I became obsessed with it. And what did I do? I went on YouTube. I went and watched all the interviews about it that Tarantino gave, and I just became more and more and more involved. And I think I could do the same thing with Once Upon a Time in the West, because it just starts to build these layers and these stories, and it's like, oh, hey, check this out. When Henry Fonda came on set that day, he was hungover or something, and I just think that adds to the mystique and the lore, and pretty much just I think that's the essence of the show. Like, I didn't like this movie, but now I like this movie. And
I think that what makes a normal moviegoer and a cinephile different.
Right.
You want to go in and you want to enjoy a movie.
Yes.
And if I had seen this movie in the theater, I would have come out saying, it was okay, it was good, it was long,
Right.
and I would have had my feelings about it. Going the extra mile, doing the research, learning about it, that's what makes it fun. And I do like that part of it. Like I said, I did the same thing right after we watched it. I went and started looking up where these things were filmed, who was involved in it, and because for me, it was like, I know the history of the spaghetti western, and they filmed
Right.
in Italy. They saved money, and throughout the movie, you see a lot of the dialogues overdubbed with people speaking Italian and stuff like that. So I was curious: were these really filmed in the West? And I looked it up, and like I said, throughout that, I figured out where it was, and all that stuff.
You know why I checked that out? Because when I watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, he flies to Italy to
Right.
do the spaghetti westerns, and I was like, I wonder if this was filmed in Italy because it looked too much like Monument Valley or
Right.
something, and I was like, I don't think they have that in Italy, so.
Yeah, and well, for me, and like with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I had a different reaction where when I saw it in the theater, I actually really enjoyed that movie. Like, it
Nice.
was really good. It didn't feel long. Like, it had long, dragging parts, but didn't feel long, even though it's a long movie.
Right.
I enjoyed it a lot. For me, the subsequent watching on TV, I feel I didn't like it as much.
Wow.
And I believe part of this is this movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, probably even Once Upon a Time in the West, and stuff like that. I think they deserve the bigger screen.
I agree.
You don't feel the gravitas of these movies on this smaller screen. Even on a 65-inch television, lights off, good surround sound. I didn't like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as much as my theater viewing experience. And I think maybe this is where this movie would have been better for me
In the
on a
theater.
big screen, IMAX or whatever, and really felt. Because there's a lot of wide shots. There's a lot of scenery. There's a lot of things to watch. And
I completely
being
agree.
compressed felt claustrophobic
Imagine
for this movie.
seeing this film in a theater with an audience.
Right.
I think it would be out of this world, especially after the second viewing. I think this would be incredible to see in a theater. So I agree with you. I agree that sometimes the home experience just isn't good enough. Like, what did Dennis Villeneuve, whatever his name is, say about Dune? He said
We're gonna spend the next 75 episodes, Aaron, trying to say this guy's name.
he said about Dune, you cannot experience this on your television. This is not an experience for your television screen. This is an experience for the theater. And I think that Once Upon a Time in the West is exactly the same. Anyways, let's get back in the movie. I am sorry. I just really wanted to. I was very happy to have that conversation with you. This is exactly what I wanted.
I'm uncomfortable.
Well, that's because I'm touching your leg. So
Oh, shit, that's
Well,
right.
it just makes sense because, like you were saying, it's headspace. You know what I mean? There's times where I've watched movies and just didn't. I mean, I told Aaron the biggest one that I went to the theaters to see Napoleon Dynamite, and I
That
walked
was your
out of there.
biggest movie.
Yeah, it was
Oh my God.
it was my biggest movie. I walked in that theater and watched the movie. When I came out, I hated it. I
Everyone
absolutely
loved that movie
hated
at the
it.
time.
Now I love that movie because it's like I look at it and I go, man, there's so many like comedic genius parts to that movie
I love that movie
make it
so
so
much.
funny.
So my Napoleon Dynamite or my Step Brothers is Anchorman. I hated that movie when I first watched it. I thought it was dumb. The dialogue was terrible. I don't get why people loved it. And anytime it's on or whenever I feel like laughing with my teeth out, I throw on Anchorman. That is one of the funniest
So
movies I've
most
ever
Will
seen.
Ferrell movies are like that for me, where like
gotta
I
rewatch 'em.
I got it. Yeah, I go in the theater. I'm like, that was stupid, and then
Just wasted
I'll-
$6.
and then I'll see it on HBO or whatever, and I'm like, hold on, this is the funniest thing I've ever
yeah.
seen ever, and I'll stop mid stride, and just watch.
Yeah. Like every time Shawshank Redemption is on TNT, I'm just like, okay, I'll watch it again.
Oh, so literally every Saturday.
every 3 hours on the dot. But yeah, this movie, for me, the confines of a home viewing experience, I think took away from how beautiful this movie is.
Yeah, and I don't even-
I'm not even saying this is a bad movie to me. I feel like I'm coming across as I'm gonna rate it low or something like that. No, I just feel like. Whereas I saw The Devil, and this is not me being biased for what I picked versus what Scott picked. I think
okay.
for me, that movie at 2 hours and 20 some odd minutes didn't feel long.
Right.
Whereas this movie, the first 20 minutes felt like very long. And then I realized I still have another 2 hours and 28 minutes left. So I think mentally I was set up for, okay, what the heck is going to be happening here? And
that's fine.
it dragged in some parts.
But does it make it different when you know a movie's going to be long and you're expecting that versus you watch a movie that's long that just seems like it's super long?
I'm the type that watches all like 8 to 12 hours of all the Lord of the Rings back behind the scenes.
Right.
Like I don't mind sinking time into something that I think.
Because
I'm
I
going to
watched this
enjoy.
movie knowing that it was 2 hours and 45
me
minutes,
too.
and like I said, I had to break it up because I knew that I didn't want to fall asleep. I didn't want to doze off during anything and be like, oh, what'd I miss? I got to rewind it. I got to go back to it. So breaking it up for me, maybe that was what helped my opinion of the movie. I don't know. Like I said,
I can't
I
do
wanted
that.
to make sure that my headspace was good.
I find it so hard to break a movie up like that.
Me
'Cause
too.
Then I feel it's like with me and my job, where it's like if I stop in the middle of what I'm doing, go do something, and come back, I almost have to restart something because I can't mentally put myself right back in the middle of something.
Well, it was like 10 minutes. It was like 10 minutes for me. Like, get up. I went
I thought
in.
that was about
earlier.
No.
I went in, went to the bathroom, fed the dogs. I kept it up on pause, and then I came back, sat down again. I just needed to get up and
Yeah.
change my headspace so that I didn't miss anything of it.
I couldn't imagine this coming out in what was it, 1968?
Yeah.
I think is when it came out. Having that 2 hours and 50-minute
But-
cut in the theater, like
No.
that would feel like there would be like a Gone with the Wind intermission.
Well, that's
halfway
what I'm
through.
saying. I think movies back then were epic because they had those intermissions. It was almost like a play. I always harken back to the Ten Commandments. I point at it every time. It's so
Not a
effing
visual medium.
I know it's so effing long, and like it's all these movies from back then were this long, and I'm okay with the runtime. I hate when people complain about runtime in a movie because you'll sit there and you'll binge 400 episodes
Oh,
of,
God, yeah.
of some Netflix show.
Watch
but
9
you're-
hours of The Office, but I can't sit through a 3-hour
Right,
Western.
exactly, and that really bothers me, especially when people talk about The Irishman, which I do not put on a pedestal like everybody else does. I thought it was a great movie, but I didn't think it was a Martin Scorsese's like opus that he thinks it is. It's a long movie, but I didn't have a problem sitting there in the theater for 3 hours watching it because I can binge a TV show in a day. It's not a big deal.
Okay, so speaking of Opus, real quick, people say that this particular movie is Sergio Leone's best movie. Have you seen any of his other stuff? There was like Once Upon a Time in America. There was the Nameless trilogy, things like that. Do you have any file on any of his other works?
I unfortunately do not.
Okay.
I own.
Here we go.
I own The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly on 4K, but I have yet to sit down and watch it. So.
Okay, I've seen the one with Tuco as one of the main characters, and I think that was the last of the trilogy.
Breaking Bad?
No, Tuco's a very Spanish name.
Well, The Good,
I
the
think
Bad,
that
and the
was
Ugly is the last. It's
the last-
Fistful of Dollars, Few Dollars More, Good, Bad, the
Okay,
Ugly.
then I've seen Good, Bad, and the Ugly, and that's the one with.
And if you sit down and
Tuco
watch Good, Bad, and the Ugly, compare it to this movie, there is a difference
Oh, yeah.
visually to those two movies, because Good, Bad, and the Ugly, like I said, it's almost a cleaner cowboy version. This movie is very gritty, very dirty,
Right.
very dusty, it's worn down.
Well, and that's where my disconnect was originally. I feel like this one was long, and I feel like he was wanting these big, grand things. Like he finally got his studio money, and made this giant, grand thing. Whereas with the Nameless trilogy, he had little stories to tell, and they were compressed and the way they were. And like I said, I'm coming at it where I have seen things that I've enjoyed better. Unforgiven, Tombstone. Those are like my two favorite, westerns.
Did you know Scott's never seen Unforgiven? Or you don't like it?
I
Or
saw
you don't like
Unforgiven
it?
one time, and like I was saying with you, I think it was my headspace because
I think he watched Space Cowboys. I think that was the difference.
I saw it one time, and I was just kind of like, I don't see what the big hype is behind this movie.
So good.
So I
Back
may
to
have to go
Future
back.
3.
I may have to go back, and I may have to revisit that movie again because I'm kind of on this Western kick.
Right.
But, it's again that just harkens back to the whole headspace thing. It's like I remember watching that movie. I remember probably dozing off, doing the whole thing, and I never went back and watched it again.
Right.
Now, is that a movie where everybody loves it? Now, I go back and watch it again, all of a sudden I see what everybody loves. And I may be missing out on something that I didn't go back to revisit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen a lot of movies and westerns to sit there and on my first run through to see the story, understand what's going on, pay attention and see some of the things that I feel like people were talking about. I mean, there things I missed. Sure. I mean, it's 2 hours and 50 minutes. I can't, catch everything, but I feel like my initial run was a good enough mark for me to make an opinion of this movie. Will I watch it again? Probably. I like Westerns. I'll watch Tombstone 1,000 times and never get bored of it. I mean,
but those have identifiable characters.
Right.
And I think we watched that movie based on Doc Holliday, Wyatt Earp, all those guys. I don't know. I mean, Val Kilmer's performance, amazing.
Yeah.
That probably set this movie over the top. Without that performance, it's another.
It would have been Wyatt
Earp movie. Yeah. So
Kevin Costner.
you never know, man. It's just it's so weird, but I think that it portrays the characters. I think if you want a true depiction of what the West was, this movie will give it to you.
Okay, well, so then speaking of characters, in this movie, what characters I think put this kind of over the top for you?
Jason Robards, Cheyenne.
Yes, thank you.
fucking
Okay,
love
Cheyenne
him.
was my favorite. Okay, thank you. Yes, Cheyenne.
There's an auction scene where Harmonica kind of like he's giving him so he can bid on the property and keep the property under. I don't remember exactly why they're auctioning it off.
Well, she's pressured into
that's
auctioning off her property because of Frank's
basically
gang.
going to kill her anyway.
I watched the movie twice. I can't remember it.
and the railroad. So essentially, they kind of all the bad people band together to overtake the bad guy.
So
$20.
yeah. So Harmonica bets $5,000, and he's turning in Cheyenne, and he's like, he said something about Judas. The line is like, "Oh, thanks, Judas." He's like, "They didn't have dollars back then."
Well, yeah, like, he basically said, he goes...
both times I watched it, I fucking
that was a
my
great
knee.
part because because for the most part, and we're calling him Harmonica. I don't know if they ever called him Harmonica by name.
Cheyenne gave him that name
Did he?
in
Okay,
the beginning of the film.
His name listed in the credits is Harmonica.
And that's I think the only reason why I knew
when
that.
Jill stops at that bar and meets him, and then Cheyenne comes in with the stuff on, and he swings the light, and he's playing the harmonica. He's like, "What's your deal, harmonica?" And that's like it.
I gotta say that was one of my favorite scenes because like she goes in, talks to the bartender, is very lighthearted, and then Cheyenne's character comes in and is kind of immediately overtakes the room. And there's a great moment in there where he wants to kind of get into a fight. He wants to do something, and he hits the lamp, and the lamp slowly goes over and illuminates Harmonica's face, and that's such a beautiful shot because it's complete darkness, and then you see his leathery face because he's playing the harmonica, and that's like his signature thing. You hear that, something's about to happen, and then he tries to goad Harmonica into doing something, and he doesn't take the bait. He's like, "Nope, I'm gonna battle with you verbally for a minute or two, but as far as fighting you with guns, I'm not gonna do it." And then so Jason Robards' character Cheyenne goes kind of toward the woman again at the bar, and there's this man sitting right next to all this that's about to reach for his gun. And it's such a great scene because Jason Robards looks at the guy and goes, No, you're not. You're not going to do this. You're going to lose. You're not going to do this.
He's got so many one-liners in this movie that are
greatest
so
character.
great.
Oh, he was so good.
And he essentially says, "Okay, let's do this. Here, take my gun." And he's like standing there, like pelvis thrust in this guy's face with a gun in his hit, like not even in a holster, like down his pants. And he's like, "Grab the gun." So the guy grabs the gun. He's like freaking out because he was going to start some shit, and then decides no because he got called out on it. And he makes this man shoot the chains of the handcuffs Cheyenne has because Cheyenne's the leader of a gang, and the reason his motivation in this movie is Frank killing the Weasleys at the beginning was wearing the signature trench coat of his gang. So basically, Frank goes in, kills his family, and sets up Cheyenne's gang as the fall guys for it. So it takes all the impetus and the onus off of Morton. Morton. Yeah. So Cheyenne's like, no, I'm not going to be blamed for a crime I didn't commit. I done some messed up things, but this is not me. So his whole thing is he's trying to kind of clear his name in a way or find Frank or whoever did it. So he's in handcuffs and shackles. He was probably just rescued by his gang. So he makes this guy shoot the chain and then put the gun back in the holster. And it just, that whole scene, like Jason Robards from then on was immediately like my favorite character. Like
He's like
one-liner. He's very lighthearted for being a bad guy.
He's a lovable outlaw.
He's great.
He's a bad guy, but you like him.
Right.
You know, and there's a lot of scenes between, I mean, one of my favorite lines that he had in the movie is he's talking to Jill, and they have this moment where they're, you know, she's in the McBain household, they're kind of talking, and he goes to walk away, and he goes, Jill, you remind me of my mother. He's like, she was the biggest whore in Alameda and the finest woman who ever lived.
Yeah, I just, and he does this. He's, you're right. He's a bad guy. He's leader of a gang. I'm sure he's killed 1,000 people, but he's so lovable and likable. Like even at the end where he's like, you could tell he's kind of fallen in love with this woman, but knows he's not the right man for her. And he says it to her. He goes, look, you know, I'm not the right man for you.
Right.
And then he goes, but neither is he. And he's alluding to Harmonica, who she's also kind of taken with, and that's toward the end of the movie. And it's just like he's such a good character. Like you know he's a bad guy, but you also know he's got some kind of honor. Like he's got this honor code, and he doesn't want to be blamed for shit that he didn't do. He doesn't want to take advantage of this woman. He's very honor bound for such a, you know, what you're assuming is a despicable character.
He's going to help Harmonica, but he also has his own motives. I like that. The thing that I liked a lot about this movie was that it was a huge revenge movie, that every single aspect of the film, everything that Harmonica did was just to get revenge on this one character.
Yeah,
and
it was a setup.
It was a 2-hour and 45-minute revenge film. And I'm like, going back to what we were talking about, I didn't even realize that until I watched it the second time.
You don't see it until the end because he's
Right.
setting up these chess pieces to do the thing. Even the point where Frank walks out of a building after the big auction scene and people are out to kill him at this point. Harmonica's helping him survive this.
Well,
because
he wants him to survive because he's trailing him along, which it very much, that whole part of that movie reminded me of last week's movie, I Saw the Devil.
Right.
Yes.
Because he is stringing him out to help his own agenda.
Mm-hmm.
So he defends him. He sees people trying to snipe him in the town, and he's killing these people. And Frank looks at Harmonica kind of like, why are you helping me? And he's just kind of like, yeah, I'm just helping you out here, buddy. Which, I mean, it comes to, and I'm just going to say, and I don't know if anybody has anything else to say, but spoiler alert, if you haven't seen this movie, the ending is coming up, and this is where the movie pays off for me.
Yeah.
The ending was incredible. Both times I watched it, I loved the ending.
the last 20 minutes
find out, like, he sees this fictional, like this figment character walking through the desert. It comes into the final scene with Frank and Harmonica, and it's revealed why he's there.
No, why is a question I have in a second.
So it cuts back to a flashback scene of Harmonica's character. Now, I don't know if it was his father or if it was his brother.
I thought the same thing. And Aaron said it's his father. I assumed it was his brother.
It's his father. So he's holding his father up. His father is hanging by a neck over this brick structure.
He's like an archway.
And his feet are on his shoulders. And Harmonica's character is essentially holding his father up. And Frank's character walks over and shoves a harmonica in his mouth. And at that point, he just has no more energy. He falls over and his father drops and hangs.
Yeah.
And so it becomes this, it all comes to fruition. And this is before the final showdown between Frank and Harmonica that he's seeing this.
Now, this is the greatest part of having to suspend disbelief that I've ever had to do in a lot of movies. Why was Charles Bronson in a flashback a Mexican kid?
Hasn't Charles Bronson?
Because
Charles Bronson is not a Mexican kid. I
but
know he's
in the
leather bound,
movie-
like darker skin, and you know a lot of that's probably due to the
in
sun.
the movie,
it's
he's
so
supposed to be a Mexican man in the movie.
It's just that was a weird choice for me, only because like I know Charles Bronson, he's not Mexican. And
Yeah,
Lithuanian.
I kind of bypassed that whole thing.
I get the
because-
reasoning for it, and it didn't take away from the impetus of why he wanted the revenge. It just it felt so weird. I'm like, wait, why is this kid Mexican? Is this Charles Bronson? And then you realize that's supposed to be Charles Bronson. I'm like, okay.
Only when he put the harmonica in his mouth.
Right, and then you really get, I'm like, oh, okay, so he's been going after Frank for God knows how long, which kind of puts me back at the beginning of the movie. How did Frank know to go after Harmonica? Did he already know him, or did he already know he was going after him? Why were those guys sent to get him?
Oh, because he told him. He says when he beats up that fat guy, he says, "Hey, your information was wrong. Frank didn't meet me there. It was his 3 goons." So I think he sent him a letter like, "Hey, I'm coming into town to get you."
That's so weird. Yeah, maybe, and this is where a second viewing might help me along. I don't know why they were. I think maybe they were sent there for someone else, and he happened to be there, or something. I don't know why Frank, if he didn't know he was coming, would have sent these men to intercept him at the train station.
I think it's one of
maybe
those
there was another reason I may have missed it.
Moments where
I'm
it's
fine
like,
with it.
I mean, yeah, there's moments where I can suspend disbelief. You know, like if you're trolling through town with big magnets in your car and you're pulling power lines down and stuff. You know, I could just oversee things and just take that for what it is.
I rewatched that with my kid.
You really did?
No, I just those parts. Like I would not let him watch that entire movie. I just throw those parts on because he likes cars and all that stuff.
I don't think
I
that
still
any of
watch
that-
it, and she throws that magnet on and pulls the power lines down. I'm like, this fucking movie.
I don't think any of
going
these moments deflect from the story of the
No, it
the
was just
movie.
it was like with I Saw the Devil, where you get the the murder scene. I feel like it was it was one of those things where you could have cut the serial killer house out and the movie would have been just as good. I think this choice, although it didn't take me out of the movie, just felt weird. But I mean, overall, I mean, it was fine. And I get it was neat seeing that all that lead up, there was a reason why he was doing what he was doing. Because honestly, up until then, he had never told anybody why he was going after whoever. You don't even know if he was going after Frank specifically.
It was, for me, it was a good twist in the movie because the whole movie is set around this house and this property. And then it kind of twists out to, oh, this is the reason why Harmonica is here. And he's here to get Frank and his outlaw buddies.
There was also one part in the movie where I almost stood up and cheered. Harmonica has been captured by Frank and his gang. He's talking to Morton. Frank and his gang take off because Frank saw that, Charles Bronson was on top of the train. So he's like, I'm smarter than you. I'm going to get you. So he's sitting there caught. Jason Robards is on top of the train now to go get Harmonica to get some shit. And he puts his gun in his boot, sticks it down near the window. One of the bad guys goes out and thinks it's a foot and then pulls the trigger, and in the only scene where there's any kind of gratuitous violence, shoots the guy in the face, and it almost looks like you see the bullet hit the guy in the face. And I almost stood up and cheered because that was the coolest part. And Jason Robards then takes his gun out, kind of chuckles to himself, and sticks his boot back on his foot with a big gun hole in the toe. And I swear to God, it's just he is the best part of this movie. Like, it is ridiculous how much you love Cheyenne in this entire flick. And I mean, for me, that's already, putting it up there as far as my review goes. I love that guy.
Yeah, he was awesome.
Yeah, that's good.
We want to do our scores now?
Yeah.
Alrighty. Let's start with you, Jordan.
It's got some length to it. It's very beautiful. I feel like it could have cut down a little bit without cutting some of the story. I do like the revenge flick stuff. For me, it's like I saw other Westerns that I enjoy more. But I mean, I would go back to watch this if I was in a different headspace. I had the time, or maybe one of those I split it up kind of things. So I would say it's a 3. I mean, it's pretty good. I mean, I do like some of Sergio Leone's other stuff. I do like other Westerns, but I mean, it's good. I'm not gonna lie and try to be an asshole about it. I you know what I mean? Like I did feel like I was bored for some of it, and we had our little exchange the other night, and I got the story right off the bat. It felt generic, but it felt like it was done well. So I mean, say a 3.
Oh, 3. Okay, that's actually higher than I thought you were gonna give it.
I kind of went back and forth on it because honestly, it's like I said, it's not a bad movie. It's just it suffers from the length and suffers from my history with other Westerns that I enjoy more.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
And Scott?
So for me, it's, again, visually, it's a beautiful movie. I think the story is it does hold up. Yes, it's a long movie. And I think if you're trying to sit down, if you're going to watch this movie and haven't seen it before, you got to set some time aside where you're in a good space where you can sit down and really immerse yourself into this movie. My score, I'm giving it a 4. The only thing that's keeping it from me of giving it a 5 is the time allotment. Is that it does feel like 2 hours and 45 minutes of movie, which is not a make or break for me, but I'm deducting points based on that.
It's a commitment movie.
Yes, you got to really sit down and you got to be in the right space to really watch this movie. Or if you're a Western fan, I mean, you probably appreciate this stuff. But it was a 4,
Okay, so I said all I needed to say. This is probably going to be one of my favorite shows. I really enjoyed the conversation Jordan and I had. The runtime kills it for me. It would easily be a 5 if it wasn't for the runtime. The fact that it made me go back and watch it also probably not the best. But that could have been me. It could have been the movie. I'm not going to score it based on that because it could have been me. I stand by what I said when I first talked to you. It's boring as hell. but if you are into movies and you like these films, the score is incredible. The music in this is top notch.
And I'm probably gonna butcher it. I think it's Enrico Morricone. He's the one that did all his other westerns. He's the one that
he did Hateful Eight.
Hateful Eight.
Yes.
Yeah, there was some history on that one. But yes, he is very famous for doing a lot of these epic, sweeping western scores for some of these movies.
Right, and the visuals were excellent. This is a perfect movie. I'm not giving it a 5 though. I just can't. It is a 4 for me as well. I don't think it is the greatest western to ever grace our TV screens or our movie screens, and it's a very good western. I can see it
there.
I can see it being on the list, but it isn't the end all be all of westerns. It's not something I would start with. Like I wouldn't.
Oh no.
If
This
somebody
feels like a swan song to like an end of a storyline. Like it's just.
This is not an introductory movie for someone who you're wanting to get into westerns,
right?
And you say this is where I'm going to start you out,
right?
Yeah, this is not
exactly. I think this is the end of a marathon. After you've seen the same good guy versus bad guy story a million times, I think this is it's like that. It also a lot of samurai films and stuff, it's exactly the same, and it's done better, in my opinion. So I don't want to discourage anyone when I say it's boring or 2 hours and 45 minutes. If you're into westerns or into movies in general, I highly recommend watching it. If you are going into it blind just for something to watch, I don't recommend it. I do not recommend this as a Sunday afternoon. I need to watch this film because I've never seen it, or I just want to watch a fun western. I think it's more of something you actually need to sit down, pay attention to, realize what you're getting into, realizing where Sergio Leone was at this, and all that, where he was at this in his career, and Charles Bronson, Henry Fonda, why everything came together and made it this epic. But I would never tell you to start here. That's the best way to describe it.
It's fair.
So, okay, guys. Well, that was our Once Upon a Time in the West discussion, and I really enjoyed that discussion. I hope we can do more of that. But as always, we said at the top of the show, next week will be completely different. We will be talking about my next pick, Fade to Black.
Are you an actress?
No.
It's amazing. You look exactly like me.
We know. Everybody says that.
What was the name of the movie that Tom Yule took you to see in 7 Year Itch?
Who the hell cares?
It was a creature from the Black Lagoon.
Hey, how did you know that? It's great.
I go to a lot of movies. It's my thing.
She'll eat your breakfast the way you devour those. Brain food is what you need, not escapist trash.
And we'll probably be going over. So how this is going to work is I pick Fade to Black, but you're not getting a second film on the first week. You're getting a second episode, so you don't have to. So you're like, wait a minute, you're not talking about 2. You just said you're doing double features. You're getting a second episode. You're getting the snack show as well. So that's why we're not doing a second one. But we're gonna review Fade to Black. We're gonna talk about our favorite Halloween movies. We're gonna do. We're just gonna go into that, and then at the end of that episode, we're gonna pick 2 movies, and at the end of that episode, we're gonna pick 2 movies, And then I think we discussed doing a top 5 show, which I'm stoked for.
Yeah,
So-
I want to do a nice discussion, which would kind of come in line with October 31st being on a Sunday, and
Yeah.
when we release things. So I want to do, kind of just like a Halloween movie, horror movie roundup where we just talk about what our personal top 5s are, maybe change the genres in certain cases,
Yes.
and things like that. I love horror movies.
Also-
I grew up watching stuff through the 80s. I love stuff from the 70s. I think for me, horror movies nowadays suffer from a lot of overuse of CGI or trying to do a big twist, where a lot of these older ones, had the good Tom Savini, gross, awesome stuff, and some of it was just the good, suspenseful horror. So I'm very excited for that.
Yeah, same. So we will be back next week with Fade to Black. I am doing Blu-ray picks for this one. I'm probably going to get away from that on October, but we'll head to it. But there's so many good things coming out in October. I'd be remiss if I didn't. So on October 5th, we got the Halloween collection, the one we were waiting for. I don't know if we're actually going to get it on October 5th. We might have to wait a week since it still hasn't shipped. What Lies Beneath is finally coming to Blu-ray.
Missing girl. Did you know her?
No. She was the secret he kept from his wife.
Norman?
Now,
Norman!
she's mad. She's dead.
I had an affair with her. When I tried to break it off, she threatened to kill herself.
And she's back. Harrison Ford, Michelle Pfeiffer.
I think she's starting to suspect something. Your wife.
What lies beneath?
Harrison Ford horror movie.
Harrison Ford, Michelle Pfeiffer, and directed and written by Agent Coulson himself.
I did not know that.
Yep, he wrote and directed that movie. That was
That's-
I think his directorial debut, maybe, but yes, that was his
That's
movie.
fucking awesome.
I love that movie. That one I saw in the theater, and that one actually was very creepy.
We have the Universal Classic Horror Monsters coming to 4K. I'm excited about that. Tex Avery Screwball Collection Volume 3. Very excited. Michael Keaton, Night Shift.
Chuck Lumley works nights. He's a civil servant. And so is Bill. Chuck and Bill have a very strange partnership. They also have a happy staff. Their business is growing. Their customers have no complaints. And the future looks good.
Which, if you don't want to wait till Tuesday, is on HBO Max right now. It's an excellent 80s comedy. I highly recommend it. One of the movies that molded me. Criterion's coming out with Unibaba. It's a Japanese horror film. I've never seen it, so I don't have a file on that, as you usually say. And it looks like that's pretty much it. There's a Don Knotts collection that I'm kind of excited about.
Oh, I love Don Knotts.
And yeah, it's
Apple Dumpling Gang is like my favorite Disney. Those are on Disney Plus. If you haven't seen the Apple Dumpling Gang, if you want to watch a Western with Don Knotts, watch the Apple Dumpling Gang. Those are both great.
Start with that one.
Start with
Then
Apple
you can
Dumpling
work your way
Gang,
into
go to the
Once Upon a Time in the West.
Yeah, yeah. End with Once Upon a Time in the West. Start with the Apple Dumpling Gang.
Also, there's a really beautiful American Psycho 4K Steelbook coming. Looks incredible.
I've got that one pre-ordered.
Yeah, me too.
So good.
And what was the last thing? We saw Escape Room Tournament of Champions.
Oh my god, I forgot about that movie.
Terrible film, but I really like the first one. It's a fun genre. I wouldn't recommend buying the Blu-ray. Who am I? I'm doing a podcast in a closet, but I'm just saying I don't recommend the second one, but I really recommend the first one. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, the second one is Saw. If you take away everything that made Saw a good movie, this movie was bad.
And then
I was bored in this movie. This is one of the few movies you and I have gone to that you had paid my way in because you wanted to go see it with somebody, and I went. I was like, all right, cool. You apologized to me at the end of this movie. You're like, I am so sorry for this. I'm like, dude, it's no big deal. But I've never heard you apologize for something that you had no hand in. It was great. Like that made the whole movie better because that movie was terrible, and you're like, I am so sorry. I laughed so hard.
And then the worst movie of all time comes out.
We just talked about it.
No, Space Jam 2.
Fuck that.
Fuck
Now I want that playing over the
Yeah,
trailer.
no, play that over the trailer. Fuck this stupid movie.
Oh, so bad.
So, anyways, all right, guys. So we will see you in a week for Fade to Black and our snack show. Enjoy both. Might be too much. I mean, there's 19 of you that are really hardcore listeners.
We love you.
So,
Thank you, Sao Paulo, Brazil.
yeah. All right. So I'm Aaron.
I'm Jordan.
And Scott.
And we will see you for the October Spooktacular.